presentation. We are Group Alex. So today we have with us, of course, Alex, myself, Camille, Miguel, Edgar, Prit, and Alid. We'll be discussing our case in thorough sections with you, and we await your feedback. So firstly, we're doing the Sydney House Opera um, project. Basically, it is a performing arts center that's located in Sydney, Australia. It is one of the world's most famous buildings in the world. It was constructed in March 1959, estimated to cost $7 million by Jorn Utzon and Peter Hall as the architect. However, the project was completed in 1973, costing over $102 million.
Okay, first, we want to identify the problem. And in this case, the main issues in the development of these projects was the governance and scope failure. And although this is an iconic project in architectural terms, uh, also this is a really huge managerial failure because one of the main issues regarding the building of this very famous structure was the absence of a proper PMO. They didn't have a formal governance or a scope control structure. Second, all throughout the entire project, always there was huge political interference. At the beginning, they start with the construction of the columns, but then they realized that this structure cannot support the roof designed for the entire building, so they need to make a demolition about that structure, uh, bring into the project a massive cost and loss of time. And also, always there was a fragmented communication. Uh, there was no proper channels of communication between architects, engineers, and and the client that in this time was the government of Australia itself. And so all these issues bring to this project to incur in 10 years of delay in its delivery and almost 29 times of cost overrun compared to the initial budget. Next slide, please. So to analyze in depth these issues, we need to apply or to understand the root causes. We need to apply the definition of a scope creep. A scope creep is the addition or the increasement of the scope without control. And always there are certain characteristics, specific characteristics in one project to rise this issue of scope creep. The first characteristic is project complexity. This project, the Opera Cine House, was very complex in that time. There was no building compared to that structure in that time. Additional to the project complexity, from the beginning, the stakeholders, even the government that was the client, they didn't know specifically what was the goals or the requirements for the project. Other main factor that lead to scope creep is deficient management that is very related to inadequate governance. Uh, these two issues brings poor tax specification control and weak risk management practices inside the projects. Also, another issue is poor communication that brings misunderstandings and lack of clarity in the project. And finally, client misalignment. In this project, even the client didn't know the final goal or the main objective. All these characteristics together were present in this huge project. So for me, it's very interesting that in too many literature, this project is classified as successful failure. Although this is a magnificent building and very iconic one and very known all around the world. Uh, in terms of managerial strategy, this is a very huge failure that is expressed in the delayed and the overcost that this project uh, wrote or described in this time. That's all for me. So it's turn for Brit, I think.
So now I will be speaking on the PMO and the governance failures. Now, the project failure was due to the absence of structured project management office to ensure formal governance structure. Now, I have 3 points I'd like to cover. There was a lack of project manager, no centralized control, and misalignment of the stakeholders. So, firstly, the project did not have a dedicated project manager. There were conflicts between the architects, the engineers, and of course, the government body. The PM would have authority to make decisions in line with the strategic objective. This would ensure that the entity stayed on budget, on schedule, and on scope, and they would have assessed the necessary risks. Secondly, centralized control. PMO would have established a communication hub, proper risk management tracking, proper change management processes, and ensure better budget management. Now, this is critical to ensure accountability if there was an established PMO to ensure that the project maintained its performance. And finally, misalignment. Project governance was undermined by the political influence, and it was first evident with construction beginning before the finalization of the design through the Minister Hugh. He also undermined the architect's feedback and also withheld payments. Now, this affected the designer, Jorn, forgive me, his pronunciation, Utzon, which resulted in him resigning in 1966. Thank you.
Now about risk management and cost overruns. We noticed that the project was managed under SWOT methodology, which means that they started building based on assumptions instead of facts. We might imagine that with mega project like this one, all the requirements requested by a client must has be very detailed, but sometimes other personal interests could be influence that decisions. Um, Here's where we understand the importance of project management office to avoid different risks that could happen. As a group, we found 5 important risk managements that happened during the execution of Sydney's Opera House. Um, First of all, we have the technical risks. These are aligned with political risks, but I'm gonna talk about them in a few minutes. Even though Utzon clearly started that he hadn't finished the structural designs, the client instead on immediately start work on the project anyway. And the unfinished design before the start of construction based only the conceptual sketches without having structural plans or structural law calculations was one of the principal um, reasons for design redesigns and delays. These errors could have been mitigated from the beginning by establishing risk identifications and assessment phase before any project proposal was approved, or dividing the project into approval stages. Each phase should have required a complete structural validation carried out by a risk analyst before starting each new stage. The second risk is the technological. This lack of research, resources, and experimentation regarding the innovative techniques with the cure roofs had to be created were not considered. The cure roof design were achieved after 5 years, and with the experimenting the different techniques, since the structural complexity was too much for the engineering of that time. Although the REM methodology didn't exist in that decade, methods like SPERT or CPM had been created and could have been applied to identify the dependency between the roof design and the construction sequencing. The third risk is the financial risk. With an initial budget of 7 million Australian dollars, and the proposal didn't present a feasibility study. Even they didn't consider technical studies or contingency analysis. By consider only what was political acceptable, again, the political risk, we just estimated and don't have a monitoring system for financial performance or a realistic project cost baseline. The final cost of the project was $102 million, causing the loss of credibility of the Ministry of Public Works by allocating the public funds without a technical justification. Um, with cash flow analysis and monthly budget variance reports, would have been supported the comparison between planned costs and the actual cost, which would have allowed the early detection of cost overruns. The fourth one is the unrealistic schedule risk. The project initial deadline was set by completed in 4 years. That data was really unrealistic since they wasn't technical data in the proposal. No planning methods like the CPM or PERT analysis was used without the work breakdown structure or logical sequences in the activities. They underestimated the time required to solve the technical problems they were finding in the process. This situation caused the delay of 10 years, increasing, of course, the cost of the projects due the rectification or the corrections or reworks. Now, the last one is the political and the stakeholder risk. The project was approved for political reasons to gain public approbation. In 1959 was the state elections in Australia. The risk associated with changes in public administrations and the lack of synergy of expectations and instead among key actors were caused by no established formal communication channels with the creation of a committee that carry out in institutional supervision made up of government represents and independent experts. Um, it will have provided a transparent and continuous control mechanism. Thank you.
Okay, so I'll be going over stakeholder management, decision making, and how it's related. Now, basically, stakeholder management involves identifying, engaging, and aligning the interests of everyone that is involved in a project that can benefit from it, mostly financially. And the Sydney Opera House is a classic example of what can go wrong when stakeholder roles and communications are unclear. The project had several key stakeholders: the New South Wales government, which controlled the budget and the decisions; the returning character, Danish architect Jorn Utzon, who had a strong creative vision but limited political power; the engineering firm of Arab and Partners, responsible for making the design structurally feasible; and finally, the public and arts community, who were the end users and symbols of national pride. Unfortunately, there was a lack of stakeholder alignment from the very start. The government pushed for construction to begin before the design was finalized, which forced engineers to make educated guesses, which is never good when it comes to construction or any architectural job. When political leadership changed in 1965, the relations between Utzon and the new administration became so bad that he eventually ended up resigning. From this, we move on to decision making. Could you move on to the next slide, please? Thank you. Decision making, and after how it links to stakeholder management. So decision making on the Opera House project was equally problematic. Political pressure drove the project to start without finalized plans, resulting in rework and major cost overruns. There was no unified decision-making framework or single project manager to coordinate between political, technical, and creative parties. As a result, the relationship between Utzon and the government officials became adversarial rather than collaborative. From this, we learn that strong decision making requires informed, risk-based choices, not political expediency. Governance must balance ambition with practicality, and all decisions should be made with a unified framework that consists cost, equality, and schedule, and that is what we did not see over here. This could move on to how they relate, or the interrelationship between these two areas. Starting with the poor stakeholder management, which directly weakened decision quality, and a breakdown of trust and communication led to reactive choices rather than proactive collaboration. For now, that will be it, and I'll be handing the presentation over to Preet.
So let's talk about the what lesson we learned from that case. So Sydney Opera House teaches us about that future project management office, what that PMO wants to do. The Opera House was born from the creativity, but it suffers from the various chaos. The main reason a lack of the structure PMO governance. There were no clear framework, decision right, or accountability lines. In modern terms, that's like trying to launch a rocket without a control center. Structure PMO provides stability and that consistency. For example, large project like the UK Crossrails and the used an integrated PMO system with the centralized decision logs and performance dashboard, which can help them complete that mission and the project with that day-to-day tracking systems. The next lesson, that case study gives us that the balancing innovation with the realism. That architecture design was the breathtaking, but the project began construction before the design were even finalized. So that's was the issue. Future PMOs must encourage the bold creativity within the practical constraint and ensuring the budget, design, and schedule are harmonized before the examinations. Then come on the risk governance. The Opera House team assumed the ground was the sandstone and it was not. This oversight led to a massive delay and the cost overrun. A proper PMO should have a conducted deeper feasibility review and continuous risk assessment using the modern tools like that risk matrix, risk registers, and the various kind of the software which gives uh, risk register, and we can that team can or the organization can decide about the which risk can go for the prioritization, and it's like that. Finally, on the slide, they talk about the stakeholder synergies essential. Political pressure from the premier forced the project to begin early, and while communication gap between the engineers and architectures that fuel a conflict. A transparent, well-facilitated PMO can bridge this device and keeping everyone from the designer to government officials aligned on the shared goals. Next slide, please. Now let's talk about blueprint of this sustainable governance. So build the future PMO excellence. First of all, the PMO must be adaptive. They should not operate with the rigid framework, but evolve as the project grows. For instance, in large-scale infrastructure like Dubai Expo 2020, the PMO continuously updated governance structure as new challenge arose. Second, cultivating agile and transparent culture helps prevent communication breakdown when information flows freely. Problem are detected early. Imagine if the Opera House team had a regular cross-functional review. Third, successful PMO learned from the failure. That's the true. Each project, even the trouble one, become a data source for the next. And knowledge management system can track the risk, cost, and the lesson can turn a mistake into institutional vision. Strategic collaboration, last but not the least, ensure that the creativity and practically go hand in hand. Tools like the balance scorecards or the governance audit keep innovation aligned executions. Next slide, please. So now let's move on recommendations. So according to that case study, we are providing the three recommendations. The first one is enforce the PMO governance framework. The early mega project create a formal PMO governance model to maintain accountability and decision making. For that, we need a alignment and establish the effective reporting relationship and authority lines combined with PMO governance and project strategy. Implement governance manuals and describing escalation review. And benefit for this is minimize the politics and the time wastage and increase the transparency for the better communication and high standard of quality of the product. On recommendation two, combine the risk and financial governance. For that, integrating risk management and the financial control in PMO lifecycle. Alignment, apply a predictive analysis, CPM, but or this Prince2 software for that periodic and cost variance contingency review. Reduce the benefit for this is that reduce the overrun and delay and provide the financial responsibility from the corrective interventions. The last one is improve the stakeholder alignment, which can possible through the standardize and the institutionalize the stakeholder participations in the project directions. The carry out the stakeholder mapping and the constant communication, create a autonomous supervision and change the management guidelines. And the merits for this is enhance the cooperation and minimize that disorder, enhance the responsibility, transparency, and it provides a flexibility and is easy to implement the on the project. That's it. Next slide. Yeah, Camille will discuss further. Thank you.
Thank you. So in conclusion, the Sydney Opera House project is a great example for project failures due to lack of a structured system. It is critical to establish clear governance framework, integrate a rigorous risk management protocol, and ensure stakeholders are aligned from the beginning. Now, with the politicalized decision making, which caused most of the issues, starting the project before it had actually finalized the sketches, created several issues. Now, with establishing a PMO, it will enforce accountability and ensure that the project remains online. Unmanaged risk can lead to technical and financial issues as well as scheduling challenges it is evident that the project went over budget and extended over 4 years planned with going into 16 years. So it led to several redesign, demolishment, restructuring, and they had to find foundation, redo the foundation when they realized that the existing structure could not maintain the structure. And finally, stakeholder misalignment resulted due to the lack of a PM that came to decision-making issues and conflicts between the architect, the engineers, and the government bodies. So with a PMO in control, all of these issues can be alleviated. Thank you, team. And we're looking forward to Professor's feedback, and we await your questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.